This is Immigrants Making an Impact, the podcast. Today, we are excited and thankful to have Omotayo Banjo, all the way from the United States, Ohio, to join us to have a conversation. Tayo, tell us a bit about yourself.
I always start from the beginning, which is where I was born and who I was born to. I am a child of immigrants, Nigerian immigrants born in Washington, D.C. So that is a big part of how I see myself. And maybe because I'm Nigerian or because I'm Yoruba, I pursued a degree, the highest degree in the land. And so I ended up getting a PhD. The PhD is in mass communication, but essentially I study the social psychological impact of media. And that journey is one that is informed by my desire to see the power of words get us to think about how we treat one another and how we can love one another better. So I am a professor. Currently, I am serving as in an administrative role over graduate education. So yeah.
Wonderful. I would love to hear more about you being a second-generation immigrant, because this immigrants making an impact.
Right.
And tell us about that. I know you were born in the United States, but you're an immigrant. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting space to be in because in my experience, and some literature has shown that for second gens, there's like this awkward in-between space of being both or neither. And in your context, at least in my experience, I was rejected by a lot of my Black American friends. They would ask me, "Are you Jamaican?" Right? Because they didn't understand what, at that time, and even now, their concept of Africa was one where there was a low value perception of Africans. So there's no way Africans could have made it here. Or maybe what was cool then was Jamaica, because everyone knew Bob Marley. And so for me to be not Black American, it's like the alternative was to be Jamaican. But then they would also call you African booty scratcher. Because again, their impressions of Black Americans was that, their impressions of Africans was that they were dirty, unclean, and poor. And so I experienced that. And then, of course, on the Nigerian side, from native Nigerians, I was told that I wasn't African. In fact, they would tell me, you're not Nigerian. They would just go out of their way to tell me that I was not. And when I was younger, every now and then I would ask, and they would say, "You can't even speak the language." And they would start speaking the language to me, and I didn't understand. And so if I failed that test, then that questioned my authenticity as a Nigerian. And so to be second gen for me meant that Americans did not think I was American, and the Nigerians did not think I was Nigerian. And so I had to figure out for myself what I was. And also I just kind of leaned into who I am as a person and not being defined by the cultural boundaries or the cultural identities that I was engaging with.
Cool. Tell us about what you do in media, what you do with storytelling and the power of words and all that.
Okay. Well, initially, as I had mentioned earlier, I had wanted to be a journalist. But I realized they didn't get paid a lot of money. So I said, never mind. But I wanted to be a journalist and investigate stories that brought important stories to people's attention and to really get people to think. And I'll say this, I always tell the story of Amadou Diallo. And I don't even know how many years it's been now. It's probably been 30 years since he was killed. He was a Haitian immigrant in New York who was shot 50, maybe 51 times by 4 police officers. And they thought he had a gun when he was trying to pull out his wallet to show. And even now, when I tell that story, I feel so sad because it just left a mark on me that this brown skin made you scared, that it required 4 police officers shooting at the same time, one body. So that I wanted to talk about it. And I felt that the news didn't cover it. The news didn't see it as important as I did. And think about the implications of like, what does this mean for other brown people? So I thought I could do that through journalism. Eventually, I thought, okay, maybe, if I do my research on this, I can set myself up as an expert on these issues and have a more credentialed voice, and
Mm-hmm.
so a credible voice. And so using, I ended up exploring entertainment, and I wanted to look at its impact, but then eventually it evolved into uh, focusing on Black stories and what Black people were saying. So in Black movies and music that Black people sang, what are they saying about who they are? What are they saying about their experience with race? And Black audiences, what are they saying about their enjoyment? And so I believe that whereas there was a time the only representation of Blackness was one of a very violent, aggressive male or one of a very sexualized woman,
Mm-hmm.
what we see when we have people like, I'll start from Oscar Micheaux, who's one of the earliest Black directors, to um, Issa Rae, who we are maybe more familiar with now. They can tell stories about Black people's humanity as people. And
Mm-hmm.
so you use the power of narrative, you use the power of story to counter the dominant narrative, which from a critical perspective is not just the loudest one, but the powerful one, because it is ingrained in these racial ideologies about who has value.
Mm.
And in the West, well, unfortunately, it seems globally that we believe that European descended people have more value. But when we tell our stories, again, whether through film, television shows, TikTok, reels, we're countering. To me, it's a form of to me, it's an act of violence to be able to tell your story and say, this is not who you, we're not who you said we are.
Mm.
Um, we are people, we are human, we have all facets of our being. So we counter the stories. And so I wanted to be able to create a space to, in my field, to study those stories and elevate those stories, and say that Black narratives matter.
Amazing. Thank you for the work that you are doing. I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's helpful to the community. It's making a significant difference. Let's talk about again second generation immigrants. So if there's anyone listening and they are torn between identities, they are
Mm-hmm.
neither left or right. So where they are born, they are not accepted. Where their roots are, they are also not accepted. So how do they navigate that?
Yeah, I wish I was good at remembering quotes. But there's a popular scholar, philosopher, Frantz Fanon, who I heard someone quote him about deciding who you are. Like you
Hmm.
don't give that power to anyone.
Hmm.
And and I remember hearing that, and it connected with me. But for those of us who are born overseas, we are transnational people. Literally, we are across nations. Um, and in the same way, when hip hop crosses into India and it becomes a different form, or crosses into Russia and it's still hip hop, but there's a little flair to it that's unique to the people who are creating it. We are transnational beings, and so we're going to have some things that are core to our heritage, and there's some things that evolved in the culture that we are steeped in. And I think we have to get to a place where we are okay with that, where
Hmm.
we, because culture is always evolving, and but we just, I guess, evolve faster because we've been transported.
Hmm.
um, we're somewhere else. We're being, as I said earlier, we may have been born where we are, but we're being raised. At times, we could be raised as though we're from somewhere else. There's this interaction um, between the cultures, and a lot of contributors to my book, Dreams for Our Children, talk about that, this interaction between the cultures that they're trying to raise their kids in, and the culture around them, their cultural context. And so you mix that cultural context, the local cultural context, with the culture in the home. You don't know what you're going to get, but it's up to the individual to decide who they are, what they will keep, and how they will proceed and move on in the world, understanding themselves as having this, being a transnational being and having these roots.
Wonderful. In this community, we talk about the power of choices. The choice is ours. We get to choose, and that is amazing. I think that that is a powerful tool that we have as a people to, just be. Tell us about the impact that you are making through your work, through your passion. I read on your LinkedIn that, let me go back to that, you are an author, you're a speaker, you're a critical creative education innovation champion, and you're also a media consultant. Take us through all these titles and roles.
Well, I guess I'm an author because I write.
Mhm.
Mostly, I have published a lot of academic work, but I I write poetry, and I have a couple of projects I'm working on. And any opportunity I get to, when I'm invited, I speak on the power of what I will call counter storytelling, right? Pushing back the dominant narratives and reclaiming um, one's identity and power and value. Um, and so that's that. And so when it comes to critical creative, yeah, to me that's the it captures what I do because I am a creative, as I said earlier. I write songs, I write poems, I think I like to think outside the box. I also understand systems, and when it comes to identities and society, I understand the value of critical thinking and strategy. And I think it's really important when telling stories, whether it's again song or poetry or television, that our story should get us to think, and
Mhm.
our story should get us to make decisions that are for the greater good and that elevate and amplify voices. So I'm not the person who enjoys basic entertainment. I know someone told me once I should just watch Real Housewives and just be happy with it. That was many years ago. But as in, like, just, because I tend to think a lot. I get that.
Mhm.
But the reason I call myself a critical creative is because I'm the kind of person who values storytelling that leads to empowering people, to thinking again, to rethinking, to questioning in a way that leads us to being better. Um, and so, also, as a result, I value thinking outside the box and using education to empower people. And so, in my capacity right now, in administration, I am helping to lead innovation when it comes to what does graduate education look like. Because to me, grad education is a way that people find their voice and they find their path. And I want to encourage people to think outside the box, be creative in that way, but also be critical, and be strategic about how you are using your education training to, again, make an impact on the world. Um, and so, because of this, I have been fortunate to work as a media consultant for some companies where they seek my insights on, hey, is this representation good? It's for entertainment. It's nice. But they know I can say, no, if you keep doing that, if you have this portrayal of this character like this, it's perpetuating ideas that can be harmful.
Mhm.
So you may want to redo that. And so I've been able to give feedback on different projects to make sure that what we are presenting or what is being represented is fair and honest and honoring to really the Black community, the Black diaspora community.
Thank you for being that powerful force for the community. I think that we really need it. And thank you also for sharing what you call counter stories. I think that it gives all of us perspective to rethink our stories, to rethink our words and what we put out there on the media. I think the media is nowadays very broad. So everybody's creating, everybody's sharing, but you help us to pay attention to what we share and put out there on the media. So thank you. Tell us about what it takes for one to make an impact. How can one make an impact in your eyes?
Well, I always think it's important for people to start with who they are and how they are. There's a reason you are who you are. And there are communities who can receive that. There are people who need you to be who you are, the way you
Mm,
are.
mm,
And so I really think as we are who we're made to be, we could be making an impact and not realizing it. A second reaction to that question is that I think it's important for people, for us, to be thoughtful about the choices we make and investments we make. Um, what are we investing our time, energy, and money in? Not every career has to be, purpose driven. Sometimes, a job is just a job, but um, whatever path you're taking, I think is important to ask how is this helpful to a community? How is this serving? Or even if, I'm just trading stocks and making all this money, what are you doing with it? How
mm,
can you use it to help? Because let's be frank, there's a lot of evil in this world. I mean, people may not want to call it that, but there's a lot of things that should cause us to weep. And that's life because that's just the way the world is. What side are you going to be on?
mm,
How do you use your influence, your resources, your relationships to counter the voices that perpetuate ideas that harm other people or perpetuate actions that harm other people? I don't believe in just living for yourself. I know we're in an age where we are trying to protect our peace, and I get it. There's definitely space for drawing boundaries and not allowing things to harm your mental health. Concurrently, I think it's important to realize that we are not here for ourselves. We are all sharing the same air. And so your decisions, everybody's decisions impact us and our decisions impact other people. So I think just being aware of that helps us have an impact. And I don't think impact has to look like a grand scale. It could be as simple as saying good morning to the lady at McDonald's or at the fast food restaurant because you decided I want to spread joy, and you don't know. It could be as simple as saying good morning and asking, "How are you?" And she needed someone to care, and you didn't even know. She may not have said it, but you showed her, "I see you."
mm.
That's an impact. And so that's how I see it in my view. I just think I value that. So yeah.
That is brilliant. Thank you for sharing those truths. Tyus, let's pause and reflect. How has the immigrant journey been so far?
I'll say one of the most beautiful thing about what I call being a transnational
Hmm.
is perspective. It is so easy to be centered in the way you see things because the community has always seen it this way. The community has always done it this way.
Hmm.
But when you get to be a hybrid, when you have to interact with cultural hybridity, it shifts the way you see things,
Mm,
which helps you to innovate, which helps to, I think, advance uh, certain issues from a more nuanced perspective. And so I, I really appreciate that being in this position has really helped me to have perspective and be more open to other people's experiences.
amazing. So, Taya, what would you do if you knew you would never fail?
Oh, nice question. I'll finally write my book. I have so many books that I want to write, but I would write it and yeah, that's what comes to my mind first.
Hmm.
The book I've been wanting to write since I was a kid.
So, what's stopping you then?
Work and,
Okay.
and life and
The business
time,
of life.
the
Okay.
business of life.
Mm.
Um, I feel like this probably should be something more, but that's what I would do.
Okay. So, just go ahead and do it. I think that a book with your perspectives, well, is what we need. So, don't stop. You have to bring this book out. It's like you have to birth this book. So please take the time. Just take a little time in a day and then write something down. Before you know, the book is out there and come and share it with the community
Yeah,
because we are cheering you on. Keep going and then bring this book out so that we support you and then, bring it out there. So do it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I will say a lot of my books are, I have 5 books out. They
Mm,
are edited volumes. So I've written in them, but I have served as a curator, gathering
mm,
people together to tell their stories. And
mm,
my most recent one, or at least the one that I had posted about, is Dreams for Our Children. And that's
mm.
probably the one I'm the most proud of, even though I didn't write it from start to finish. But it's a beautiful collection of stories from people who are either born somewhere else and came here, or children who were born to immigrants. And so that book can be found on Amazon. It's a really good book.
And it's called Dreams for Children.
Dreams for Our Children.
Dreams for Our Children. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So, community, let's check that out. What is the most important thing that you would do today to make tomorrow better?
My first reaction is start with myself. And then immediately I think of Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror song.
Mm.
Um, because I think it starts with the way you think. And so I would want to adjust my thoughts so that I can make better choices for today, which has impact for tomorrow.
Okay, address my thoughts. You are
Mm-hmm.
what you think. Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, what personal qualities or skills do you think are most critical to one's success or to your success?
Oh, to my success. Oh
Mm,
gosh. I always start with faith, to be honest. I mean,
mm,
I believe that there is a God,
mm,
and I believe that this God loves me and cares about me and cares about all of us. And apart from God, I am nothing.
mm,
Um, and so I attribute any success I've had to my relationship with God through Yeshua, Son of God,
mm,
Jesus Christ, as some people say. And so I'll start there. And even as I was narrating to you my story before we started recording, I just was thinking about the path I've taken and how, every now and then I'm like, did I make the right decision? But I feel that the Holy Spirit has led me
mm,
through all those moments where I was like, oh, I want to be a journalist. Oh no, maybe I should do psychology. But then I found myself still coming back to, I want to understand why we treat each other the way we do.
mm.
How can we treat each other better? How can we love each other better? Because I could have gone into industrial organizational psychology, boring, and made, tons of money. But I still found myself in social psychology. I was going to go into my PhD and do media effects. And I did do media effects, but I shifted my question from something that was really popular to something that really was not as popular, which is studying Black narratives. So something has always drawn me to elevate Black diasporic voices. And even when I applied for my doctoral program, I felt like I needed to apply to one. Everyone thought I was crazy because you don't know if you're going to get in. But I felt like God was telling me, this is where you're going to go. I got a phone call from the dean that said, we would like to admit you into the program. And I was an undergrad. I didn't have a master's, and they didn't typically at that time accept students with who did not have a master's into the PhD program. So, I did work, but I definitely, I think it's important to listen to God's spirit. Maybe another characteristic, of course, discipline. And doing right and treating people well. I think it's important because your relationships matter, and help you go along the way. So that's what I'll say for now. But for chief among all of the things, I just attribute it to.
Thank you for confirming the faith pillar in this community and telling us that there is a God. And yeah, I love that you share that he keeps nudging you on and showing you what to do. That's his work. That's the work of the Holy Spirit. So thank you.
Thank you.
If you could share an advice for immigrants, what would that be?
Again, my first thought is value your story.
Mm-hmm.
My second one is tell your story.
Hmm.
And not to continue to mention the book, but what I love about this book is that I don't think, and I don't know what your experience has been, but my parents didn't tell me enough stories. It wasn't
Hmm.
until I got older that I understood. They told me a few stories where I understood what they went through. So they understood, I knew that they understood what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom told me a story about how some Black American was making fun of her accent. And now when she told me that story, I thought, oh, so that's why when I would come home crying, wanting to change my name, they they could encourage me from that place.
Mm-hmm.
My dad told me about some of the discrimination he went through. There's something about knowing your parents' stories that help you make sense of your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that also helps you see the strength, your own strength. And when your kids hear it, they can see your strength. And you can see the humanity of your parents. Sometimes parents just think our job is to feed the baby and put them to school, put them to bed and take them to school. But when you tell your stories, they see you as a human and they can connect with that. That's what stories do. They connect you. And so your kids can hear you talk about your own feelings of rejection, the way you navigated that, the way you didn't let it get you down. And it can have a different impact compared to just telling them, don't think that way, believe in yourself. When they hear your story, when they see, oh, wow, you were down, but you drove cab for 4 years before you got your master's, and then you opened your own, that story can have more of an impact than telling them, oh, yeah, go to school and then get good grades. And so value your story and tell your story. That's what I would say.
Okay, finally I heard the Nigerian part of,
Oh,
oh
sorry.
yeah.
It came out. Told you it comes out when I
That's
get
so sweet.
passionate.
But I love that you shared that as parents, we should share our stories. Our stories are powerful. That's what I do. That is why I
Yeah.
do what I do. So
Yeah.
nowadays, I will go ahead and share a bit more of my stories with my kids. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Tayo, what legacy do you want to leave behind?
These are good questions. Two things. I want anyone who has interacted with me and my child specifically, even more specifically, to know that there is a God who loves fiercely and deeply and who ascribes value to us that is beyond these social constructs, right? In fact, my passion comes from a passion for elevating what I call the counter stories comes from my faith because when we hear a story that says you're nothing because you're brown or you're a criminal because you're an immigrant or you eat pets food, that's not truth. That's
Mm-mm.
not truth. That's not who you are. And I want people to know that our God is bigger than whiteness, than white supremacy, than tribalism, than racism. So I hope that can be a legacy. And I thought I had a second one, but it's intertwined, I guess. And I guess my second one would be I want people to. Um, I hope I inspire people to connect with themselves and live from a place of authenticity, and do what you're made to do. And again, it doesn't have to be a big scale, but be who you are for the people who need you to be who you are.
Our conversation has been the apex of all the conversations I've had on this podcast.
Oh, really? That's,
And it has
that's
been a highlight that, I mean, up until now, it has been the highlight of my year. Yeah, it's really deep. And I hope and pray that everyone who listens will also be able to tune in and, be able to get the depths of this conversation.
I need to listen to it too.
So, Tayo, immigrants are for the good of all. So, tell us about any project that you think we can be part of to lend a helping hand to make greater impact.
Oh, well, I have a documentary I'm working on. Um, when I am able to, when we come out of development, I would love to share that with you
Hmm.
and and have a way that we can raise awareness. To be honest, the story of the documentary is centered on my story and my hope for my daughter. Um, and then yeah, I'm just trying to get people to be aware of the book. I do
Hmm.
have hopes to do others in the like other books within the series of Dreams for Our Children. So when you see it, support it, get it on Amazon. Um, so those are the two. I mean, to be honest, I have like 5 or 6 different projects. I have research articles I'm working on. But those are the two that I think are more accessible. And, I welcome support. I actually do have a podcast that I haven't been able to continue. Podcast I might be revamping as well. So the name of my podcast is Unapologetically Us, but US. So U period S period, unapologetically us. And the mission of that podcast was to tell immigrant stories and to say, I too am America. That, again, to counter the narratives that we've been hearing over the past few years about the value of immigrants in the United States, and to say that that immigrants make America too. And so that was my podcast.
Hey, goosebumps. Thank you. Please share with us, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you?
Yes, so people can find me on my website, OmotayoBanjo.com. That's OmotayoBanjo.com. So it's my name. Or you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Obanjo. So that's DROBANJO, Dr. Obanjo. So that's how people can find me.
And also on LinkedIn.
And on LinkedIn as well, with my full name, Omotayo Banjo.
Yes, cool stuff. So finally, Omotayo, please complete the sentence for us. Immigrants are
trailblazers.
Thank you so much for coming to the podcast to share your story, the impact that you are making. We are glad you came.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this interview.